Hi guys, I'm here and welcome to today's video. As you know, recently I have upgraded my RockShox Seed Cap fork to the specialized brain damper, and because it's an S-Works Epic frame, I also have brain suspension in the rear. So after my upgrade, I was asked to do a bit of a review on this style of suspension. So what does the brain really mean? Well, in a normal scenario, in a cross-country bike, you have front and rear suspension, generally set up to be quite firm for efficiency, and then you have a lockout which closes off the compression circuit completely and makes it essentially a completely rigid bike. The problem with that is sometimes you would like to make these switches very quickly on the fly, and since you have to do it manually, it's not a very easy and convenient thing to do. Now for this, there is an electronic version called the Fox Live Valve, which is starting to appear on bikes, but it's super expensive. And there's also a mechanical counterpart which does it for you, called the Specialized Brain, which is based on an inertia valve located here or directly in the damper of the fork, where a small brass cone is activated with hits coming from the bottom to open the compression circuit, and until it's not, the suspension remains fully closed and fully rigid. So that's the theory. How does it work in practice? Well, at the rear you can see this inertia valve is located at the rearmost part of the bike to be as sensitive as possible to the impacts. Previously it was not like this. Now for 2018 they've changed the design of the Epic, and I think it really works rather damn good. Some people say that this kind of suspension is clunky, and you can certainly feel this little kind of bottoming out in the rear. It kind of feels like when your tire pressure is too low and you hit a stair or a rock where your tire bottoms out against the rim. It's that kind of a feeling, just a bit or quite a lot less supple, or a bit more subtle, should I say. So it's not that bad, but you can feel this little clunking in there. It's more of a personal preference if it bothers you or not. But the important part is that as soon as you hit a rough section of trail, that system just opens up, and what you're left with is some quite supple, nicely working suspension that gives you a ton of grip, at least in my book. I'm coming from the roadside, so I haven't really tried too many full suspension mountain bikes in my day, but I'm really happy with this and how it performs in the downhills. And then as soon as you hit a smooth section of trail or tarmac and you start stomping on the pedals after the saddle, it makes the inertia valve close off and you've got yourself a rigid bike. Sometimes it is possible, if you swing the bike from side to side or act very strong in that kind of sense, you can overcome this lockout and open it up. So there's kind of a dip, but generally it keeps the suspension very high in its stroke, even when sprinting. So it's very close to an actual lockout. Now there are a couple of adjustments that can be made to how sensitive this transition should be, but to be honest, I really like the feel of it. So at the beginning I just set it up on the firmest setting, and I decided that I like that and just left it in that position ever since. Then the front of the bike reacts pretty much the same, although since the fork moves in a linear fashion, it's a bit easier to do in my opinion in terms of execution of this locking out. And I was a bit worried that it might feel harsh at the hands, but the reality is that it works as I've expected, even better on the front. You can't really feel those jolts in there, just very sporadically when you're coming off from a very smooth section to straight to a big bump. There you can feel it. Otherwise, it really is really damn good. And on the front you can feel it even more, that if you start pushing in the fork out of the saddle, it just sits up and settles up very high in the stroke, and there it feels like you've got a rigid fork in there. So it's really damn impressive. And as soon as you hit those technical trays, again it just opens up and you're left with a very smooth and grippy feeling damper. So no issues for me whatsoever. This latest iteration of the Brain works extremely well, and as you can see, my bike is completely uncluttered from these nasty lockout levers that some bikes have. In full suspension bikes in general, it can be really quite a mess, taking a cable from the shock and then from the fork and putting in this huge lever which operates both. Just not very nice at all. In terms of adjustments, again, in the front you do have the Brain fade adjustment, so the sensitivity, but after a couple of kilometers I just put it in the firmest setting, left it like that ever since, similar to the rear, and I'm happy with it and how it performs. So this was a brief overview of the Brain suspension. I hope you have found this information useful. If you want to know more about the bikes and setups that I use for my training and racing, then don't forget to tune into the channel and subscribe. It's all for today, thanks for watching and see you next time.